Hello everyone, it is ZookX back with another old school RuneScape update review video. Today we are taking a look at the Interface Uplift Round 2 post, which went live on the 1st of October 2025. So, a couple days behind, as you can tell in my voice. I have been a little bit sick, so I haven't been recording as many clips this week, but still wanted to make sure that we reviewed the update because there's definitely some changes that people have been talking about positively and negatively. Um, and I definitely have some thoughts about some of the changes in this week's update post. So I'm excited to get right into it. As always, I will put up all of the changes here right away. If you're one of the people who just likes to read them all, feel free to pause the video. You can take a look at all of the changes, and then at the very end of the post, we'll talk about the large change that they made to Sunfire Splinters. So stay tuned. I always also seem to fail to forget to mention that we have picked the exam center as our location for the update review posts because it just felt fitting. This is where we have taken so many tests in the past, so might as well test ourselves and continue to review all the updates. All right, let's get right into it. So, starting off at the top, this is the second interface uplift update that we've gotten. It is a sequel to the update that we got last week. And the first item we're getting is the desktop minimap toggle. Now allows you to fully hide the map, similar to what you've been able to do on mobile for the longest time to save on screen space. Just a really nice quality of life change to get on the desktop client as well. And Jagex also provided a nice GIF for us here to watch of what that looks like in game. I feel as though this is just a super helpful change in general because there are a couple activities or even bosses maybe that you don't necessarily need the minimap up for, so having that extra screen space can be helpful. Next up, we got a fun change to Theater of Blood for quick starting Verzik. This is going to be a helpful change for speedrunners, and I believe they've already started going after saving some time in the final fight of Tob. So they've just added a quick start option to Verzik if you've already completed a Theater of Blood. You don't necessarily need to sit through the dialogue every single time now before you can start attacking and passing the staff. It says once you face her at least once, you'll be able to right click and jump straight into the fight, skipping the chatter. But note, this option isn't available in entry mode. We wouldn't want to rob new players of their first introduction to Verzik's charming personality. Okay, now we're at one of the pieces we need to talk about, which is the Rune Pouch loadout expansion. It says the Rune Pouch just got a new look. Boy, did it ever. Um, so the positive side of this update is they've added more loadout slots for us, which we've been desperately needing. Just having more presets for the Rune Pouch that you can pre-fill in your bank, always good, giving us a total of 10. The downside of this update is they also gave us loadout names, which I don't know if people were asking for. I feel like it's very easy to just tell based off of the combination of runes you have in the loadout what the loadout is. Um, but we got another GIF here from Jagex showing off this example. All right, so in their example, they show you what the room pouch looks like. They're picking a couple boss names from the list of names that you can use for your loadouts. In this example, it doesn't look too bad, but as you're looking through the list of names yourself in game, you kind of realize that they're either just directly named after pieces of content, either a boss or a certain activity. There's a lot in there for PvP, and they're not really named after things that I feel like people would genuinely name the loadouts. Like there's no selections for Ancients, for Arceus, for Thralls, for Death Charge, for things like that that you maybe would just name your preset loadouts. I actually hopped over in game quick because I wanted to show you how bad this update looks in the game itself. There's no option to disable the loadout names if you don't wish to use them. So even if you haven't set anything in here yourself, you can see you can see here the endless amounts of PvP options that they gave us. I don't think there's an ability to type in a custom name, so you can't set your own. And then on top of that, it's just taking up space on the loadouts. Now I can just barely see three of my loadouts. I believe I used to be able to see all four that I had set up previously in one view. Like I said, still a positive that we got more loadout slots, but I feel like this menu needs a severe cleanup. Moving on from that, we have an update to the fairy rings. We always love when Jagex gives the fairy rings some work. Um, it is the fairy ring search functionality. It says you can now search for destinations by name, making it far easier to find where you're going without needing to memorize dozens of three-letter codes. That's true. I feel like I've had a plugin for this for the longest time, so it's just nice that this is made um, kind of general availability. Everyone has this feature now. Additionally, the more important part of the update, I would say, is they've made the selectors spinning wheels much faster. They've been really slow in game for the longest time, and it just kind of it feels really good to have this changed. Jagex gave us another GIF of this, as you see. Very quickly, I did miss a piece about the fairy ring update. They've boosted our number of favorite slots from 4 to 10, so you can now favorite more fairy ring destinations. Continuing on, we have a really nice change to the stash units. Now, after you've finished your emote and you have your items equipped for the clue step, sorry, you can just go back to your stash unit and it now accepts equipped items. So you don't need to go through the process of unequipping them to store them. It will take them off of you right back into storage. If you ever don't want this helpful feature on, for whatever reason, you can go ahead and turn it off in the settings. There's a little screenshot here. The stash units take equipped items. You can toggle that on or off. And it also does say, do note that withdrawing items still sends them to your inventory, so make sure you've got space when reclaiming them, as a heads up. Moving along, we have a change to the combat achievements. They're now going to remember the screen that you were looking at prior to closing the menu. So what would happen is, let's say you opened up your combat tasks, you dug into the hard tasks, and you opened up one of the ones that you've yet to complete. If you close the menu and then went back into it, you would be at the starter menu again. Now it looks like it's going to remember that you went into the hard tier, you looked at that specific task, and you had the details open. Again, there is a toggle in the settings to turn this off if you don't want this feature. And the GIF from the update post was kind of confusing because I think it was still demonstrating the old behavior. So this is just something you're going to have to kind of notice in game for yourself. Next up, there's just a small change to the Port Phasmatis barrier. It now just takes a single click to pass. There's no longer two options for pay toll or pass. It's just one click, and it's either going to charge the account, the necessary tokens, or you'll pass through with whatever reward that you have. So that's pretty nice. We got a nice update to rants. It looks like there's now going to be a right click option for claim hats, and there's now a chompy bird hat menu. So it is much easier to either claim new hats that you don't have or reclaim lost hats from rants. The nicer part of this update is something people have been asking for a long time, which is you can now store all of the chompy hunting hats in the armor case in your player owns house's costume room. This is super, super nice. You can keep all your hats now without them taking up any additional bank space. Not going to talk about this one much, but there's another change to rewards chests, and that's now in the Chamber of Xerix. This is the same exact update we got in the first round of these changes to the top chest, which is they added that bank all button from the rewards. I said it last video, I'll say it again. I don't want them to keep sticking this in as like a new feature or like a fix. I would like somebody to just audit all of the rewards chests. This should probably just be an option available for all of the chests. All right, now we're moving into a very important game change they made with this update, much bigger than just simple interface uplifts or changes, which is the part of the update post titled Sunfire Splinters at Doom. And I'm just going to read this and then we'll talk about it a little bit after. It says, "We need to talk about splinters, not the kind you get from playing with wood. Since Doom's release, we've noticed the value of Sunfire Splinters has decreased significantly. Although the splinters gained per player at Doom are fairly modest, around 400 splinters an hour, the sheer number of players engaging with Doom for its uniques has led to millions entering the game passively. This has had a significant impact on their value and on other pieces of content, such as Coliseum, where splinters play a major role. As such, we're removing Sunfire splinters from Doom's loot table with today's game update. We know splinters are an important resource and we want them to remain valuable and rewarding to earn. However, it's clear that they can't come passively from another highly engaged activity. Instead, we see potential for a future activity designed specifically around splinter acquisition, one that provides a healthy, sustainable supply without overwhelming their value. Um, yeah, I understand that may disappoint some of you, yada yada. It makes sense. There were just way more people running Doom and running Doom at low waves than there were people running any wave completions of the Coliseum. So a lot of Sunfire Splinters coming into the game because of that, and thus driving the price down due to not needing much demand for them currently. This change doesn't really affect me much. I'm quiverless. I don't use content that uses up splinters at this point, and there really isn't much. So I think this is an okay change at this point in time. I think it's definitely going to impact the GP per hour at Doom. I would maybe like to see a correction to that. Maybe they add seeds, maybe they add different sorts of loot that can replace the GP per hour that's going to be lost there because it's already not very good unless you pull a unique fairly early. But moving on to the other changes section of the update post at the bottom, there are some trading restrictions in PvP. It looks like some sneaky players were using alt accounts to deliver food and potions mid-fight, cutting out a lot of the risks that makes PvP thrilling and even fair. I don't know why they didn't mention that. That's no longer possible. It says if you've been in combat with another player within the last 15 ticks in the Wilderness, Deadman, or PvP worlds, can't pick up food or potions that are on the floor. Great change. So now even deep will DPKers can't be dropping food supplies out at Mage Bank for themselves. Awesome. If you've been in combat with another player within the last 20 ticks in Deadman or PvP worlds, you can't trade either. Awesome. Pretty much fixes the same issue. And then multi-combat zones are unaffected, so group fights can carry on as usual. That makes sense. You still want to allow supply trading and swapping in a large multi-fight. That is still understandable. And it just says at the bottom, risk is what makes these worlds exciting, and we hope these changes keep fights fairer and more intense. Finally, to wrap up, we have the rest of the other changes section of the post. First point is Guardians of the Rift enjoyers should now find that the entrance barrier can only be locked on non-Guardian of the Rift themed worlds. Thank you. This was a problem. It says right here in the post, the list of worlds was inaccurate and one world was missed. That is true. There was one Guardians of the Rift themed world that I kept running into when I started that grind recently where people could lock the door on the primary world, and it was really frustrating. You could not get into a game until somebody else unlocked it. Next point is joining Blood Moon mid Jaguar phase will now correctly show the right Jaguar safety circle straight away instead of briefly displaying the wrong one. There's an edit that says this has unfortunately been reversed while the team investigates an issue. Apologies. I didn't really know that was an issue. I haven't been at Moons in a while, but that could be pretty deadly because Blood Moon is one of the more challenging Next point, the Virtus set now has set bonus for Ancient Magics displayed. That's awesome. Just sounds like a bug fix for the equipment bonuses that we talked about last week. New menu in the equipment menu. Next, they fixed an issue when completing Enter the Abyss incorrectly allowed players to receive Abyssal Demon Slayer tasks without Priest and Perel or Fairy Tale Part 2 completed. Yep, good fix. There were some issues with Slayer task assignments. Next one, Slayer Masters will now respect your combat level if enabled, even with a Slayer cape equipped. Awesome. That needed to not be broken. Players can now speak to any Slayer Master to cancel a task for free that is not possible to complete based on quest requirements or Slayer level in case you received a task you were ineligible for in the prior week. So that's good. Anybody whose Slayer was soft locked on their account because they didn't have any points and couldn't do any other tasks, they now have a bailout. So that's good. The weeds in the Mortania herb patch have been restored to their proper dark green color. Okay, cool. Hovering over the world map icon on desktop with tooltips enabled now displays world map along with the desktop shortcut Control plus M. That's helpful to know for keyboard warriors. Next, the rogue full stop has been spotted, rounded up, and removed. The level 93 Meredith shortcut in the agility guide is now punctuation consistent. Okay, so roundabout way of saying they fixed a typo. Then last, buying a piece of the Tithe Farm outfit no longer causes the collection log to increment the items counter by 2. Okay, yeah, because the rest of the collection log slots for equipment don't count more than 1 or 2. You only unlock it once. That makes sense. Awesome. Guardians of the Rift fix, probably the best fix here, along with the Slayer ones. Like I said, if your account was soft locked or experienced issues with that. Thank you to everyone who did watch the video in its entirety. I know this was a little bit of a longer one, but this update post contained some bigger changes to the game as far as the Sunfire Splinters drop, and I'd say these interface changes were a little bit bigger and better than the first round that we got. So if you have any comments or thoughts or feelings about any of the changes in the post, feel free to leave them in the comments. I will read and probably get back to you. Additionally, this was just a more controversial update in general with some of the room pouches, some of the menu changes. So there's definitely some feedback being shared online about that as well. I would not be surprised if in a future video we're talking about some of these changes being reverted or looked at again once more. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I always appreciate that, and I will see you around in the next one.